Recording in progress.
Good morning.
Good morning, everybody.
All right. Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning today's 3 Prakim Rambam, Hilchos Krias Shema, the 3rd and the 4th, which is the final chapter, and we're going to start today Hilchos Tefila, Birchos Kohanim, Perek Rishon. Starting with Hilchos Krias Shema, Perek Shlishi. Perek Shlishi speaks about the cleanliness that's needed while we recite the Krias Shema. We're going to have 19 halachas, beginning with halacha Aleph, says Rambam. Hakoyre es Shema, when one is reciting the Shema, roichitz yadav b'mayim. First, a person should wash one's hands with water, koidim sheyikra, prior to reciting it. And Chevra, as we learned in the Gemara, the pasuk says erchatz b'nekoyoin kapai, and as we'll be medayik, the pasuk doesn't write erchatz b'mayim. The Torah writes erchatz b'nekoyin. Obviously, the ideal way of cleaning the hands is through water. However, says Rambam, but if a person doesn't find water, and Chevra, let's remember that the Rambam holds, we're speaking here, that the ideal is to read the Shema right prior to Netzach Hama. Again, since the pasuk doesn't use the words mayim, the Torah uses the words to be roichitz, to wash, to cleanse. So a person can clean one's hands with earth. We're living in such a world, it sounds foreign to us because we have running water. But if the hands are very dirty, you're out there in the country, you put your hand on the ground, epis, it takes away the more substantial dirt, or with a stone, or with a beam of wood, or any other similar object that can rub off the more coarse dirt, and then the koide, and then one should recite the Shema. Halacha beis. The area where you could or cannot read the Shema. Ein koiden, you cannot read the Shema, it's not in a bathhouse, not in a latrine. Even if there's no excrement there. That's because of cleanliness. Now we're going to learn a different area where you cannot read the Shema for another reason. You cannot read it in a beis hakvaris, in a cemetery. As Chazal interpret the pasuk, not to be lo yeig l'rosh, don't mock the poor. Also meaning that since the mesim, lo ha-mesim yahalalu yudkei, so don't do mitzvahs in a beis hakvaris. And even if you're not in a cemetery, but within 4 ames of a mace, however, and you're not in a cemetery, according to many opinions, then muter likrois, then one is allowed to recite the Shema. Even though Chevra, washing the hands is not a biblical obligation, reading the Shema is. That's the power of the Chachamim. That once they make an enactment, if we violate their enactment, then we have to read the Shema again. Halacha Gimel. Details about what we call Hachana Milsa. Says that Rambam Beisakisei Hechada Shehuchan. If an area was designated to be a latrine, to be a bathroom, but it wasn't yet used, muter likrois Krias Shema linegdoi avoloi betoichoi, right opposite it. If it would have been used already and there is a bad odor, then you can't even read it opposite it. And a chanami hachana milsa, which is why you cannot read it inside of it, but as long as you are not inside, then you could read it. Merchatz HaChadosh, a bathhouse that was designated, even though hachana milsa, but a bathhouse isn't such a dirty place like a latrine. And since it was never used yet, right, the Gemara says, Ein meguna kol kach. So therefore, yes, muter likrois betoichai. Another halach. If you had two homes, if one clearly designated one to be a latrine, and we just learned Hachana Milsa, you cannot reach Shema inside of it. But then when you spoke about the other house, V'amar ala sheni v'zem, not gamze, but vizem. Now vizem l'choira means, and this should be a bathroom, but maybe he meant something else. He was about to say vizeh something else and he didn't finish his sentence. Because of this doubt, on one hand, but on the other hand, if you read it in there, we're speaking about a place that's clean. So then you're yatsa, because there was a doubt what the intent was. But now obviously, Chavra, if you were the one that made that statement, you know what you had in mind. Speaking about, I heard someone else make the statement, and he's not available for me to inquire of him. That's where we apply this halach. Another din, chatzar ha-merchatz, the merchatz, really there were three bottom merchatz, if you remember. In other words, there's the inner room, the outermost area of a bathhouse, which is already dressed, not the room where they get undressed. They are already dressed there, then mutar likros by Krias Shema b'chlal is not a problem. Halacha 4, halacha dalet. V'loi Krias Shema bilvad, ela calling in shehu medivrei hakodesh. Asur lo amrei bebeis hamerchatz, and nor in a beis hakisei. And that is true. Furthermore, Rambam paskins, not only may we not speak words of kedusha in such a location, in a beis hamerchatz, in a beis hakisei, or in a beis hamerchatz, or ubi makim hatni noifes, meaning that Rambam says even hirur is asur. Halacha hey, dvarim shel chayil. Muter la'amram b'loshen kodesh v'beis hakisei. One might have thought that since it's called the holy tongue, and it is a holy tongue, and you should know, my friends, that there were times that people felt that lashon hakodesh should only be used for dvarim shepekedusha. But if a person uses lashon kodesh, today the modern Hebrew to speak about mundane words, then you can speak that v'beis hakisei. Another halacha, v'chein hakinuim, guys, kinuim is in reference to God. In other words, all attributes that we are using to describe God's greatness, like by calling God Rachum and Chanun and Neman, the Chayoyse behen, and when you're using them and referring to God, then mutar la'amram bebeis hakisei. In other words, let's go. What can you not say in a beis hamerchatz? Let's speak today. Today it's common. In a beis hakisei, we'll see we b'chal don't talk, but in a mikveh, in the room where people get undressed, how are you? Thank God, that's not you should not allowed to say that. Thank the one above that you could say, because that's called already a kinui. Verstehst? Nor in a beis hamerchatz yashan, like we learned before. Guys, the word yashan is referring to the beis hamerchatz, because in a beis hakisei, even chadash you can't say, like we learned before. Beis hamerchatz, that wasn't used, even though it's designated ein meguna kol kach. But if someone is doing a behavior and you have the ability to stop them from doing it, and the way you're going to do it is by quoting a pasuk, in other words, but you're doing it not stam, you're doing it to stop a person from sinning, then even b'lashon hakodesh and binyanei kodesh, guys, that's the Gemara in Shabbos Daf Mem with Rav Meir, that you are allowed to do that. That's lahafresh someone from sinning. Halacha 6, halacha vav. Tsoyas adam, excrement of man, or tsoyas kolavim v'chazeirim, if you have leather hides in them. Why would hide be in them? Because ironically, the way you tan hides, it's by soaking them. There's different steps. Also, in soyas kolavim and in soyas chazeirim. So this oiros only refers to kolavim and chazeirim. Soyas adam smells very bad, even if it's not being used to tan hides. Or v'chol soyas sherei choyra kigoyin elu. Any other, today there's something called a stink bomb. It doesn't matter. Something that smells terrible. Asur likros Krias Shema kenegdan. Now another din, v'chein keneged meiraglaim shel adam. Is asur. In contrast, avol meiraglaim shel behema, yes, koidim kenegdan. Katan she'ena yachal lechol kezayis dagan b'chtei she'yachal hagad shloisha beitzei dagan. If a minor b'chlal doesn't eat dagan yet, there's nothing to talk about. Here, he's already eating a little bit. but it takes him, he cannot eat a kazayis of dagan when an adult will eat in that same time the equivalent of 3 beitzim of dagan, then that baby's excrement is not so foul. Ein marchikin lo mitzayasoi v'lo mimei raglov. Halacha zayin. Hoysat soya yevesha kacheres. It hardens. So if it's already that hard, but not even harder, still also likreis kenegdoi. But v'im hoysi yevesha yoysim yecheres. And how would I know that? Because if you were to touch it or to throw it, it would break apart, it would crumble. Then it's already halachically ka'afar umutar likrois kenegdom. Made aglaim shenivlu bakarka, made aglaim of Adam. Im hoya martiven hayad, if you would have put your hand on it, and your hand would have gotten moist, and that's still considered be'en. You can't read the Shema. Also likrois kenegdom. But if it had got so absorbed that your hand would not become moist, then yes, mutar. Halacha ches. Says the Rambam, 4 ames, around 6 feet. That suffices. That's if this tsoya or the meraglaim is only behind you or even on your side, but not directly opposite you. If it's in front of you, then they have to be distant. That's only if you are in halachically the same environment. But if you are halachically in a different environment, not because you are in a different room. Now, jumping in a Beis HaKnesses, ideally you're supposed to stand by Krias HaTorah. But if the bima is raised 10 tefachim, which is why many shuls make those platforms, then halachically you are in a different environment. Or if you are on a platform higher or lower, same thing over here. Then you can mamish sit near it and read it, because shaharei nifsak beinayim, because you are halachically in a different place, guys. That's only if it doesn't smell bad. The Rambam says it. Or, if you are not, it's not 10 tefachim up, 10 tefachim down, but it's covered over. If a utensil was turned over and thus covering, it's as if it's buried on the excrement, even though they are with you, they are like kivurim, and therefore, umutar likrois kinegdon halacha yud. What happens if between the person and the tsoya, you have a covering, you have a mechitza, but it's transparent? Is the issue seeing? Is the issue it not being buried? And here we're going to contrast tsoya meraglayim versus erva, as we'll see soon. By erva, what does the pasuk says? V'lo yeirah b'cha. So even if there's something that's transparent, there's a mechitza, if you can see through it, you're seeing it. Masha enkein, over here the Torah says v'chisisa est seyasecha, over there in Parshas Kisitze, that you have to cover, the soldiers. So it's about covering. It's covered, even though you can see through it. Yes, I think someone, if they could, I think that's my brother Tzemach, maybe put the mute on, that will be helpful. If someone urinated once, how much do you urinate? Everyone is different. But that's the halacha. So then, because Ervias of Mayim, so to say, dilutes to the point where it's no longer considered Meiraglaim. Halacha Yudalef. Hoyot Soya Beguma. Then, Oymed, in other words, there's a little hole, and there's Soya, guys, obviously the Soya is not 10 Tvachim deep. So you know that we paskin that you can put your foot on top of the hole. You understand, as long as the excrement doesn't touch the bottom of your sole, even though your foot is that which is covering the hole, that's fine. As long as the excrement is not touching the physical bottom of your shoe. Another din, how do you define very little? Like a drop. Then you can bury it by spitting on it. That's called buried, and v'koidam. Another din, a little bit of residue of tsoya is spread over on one's hands. Now I know that we started today learning the din of mikaneach yadav, but if you don't have soap, sometimes you can wash your hands with water. Like we learned that by COVID. You have to wash it with soap. I don't know. You have to sing Shalom Aleichem twice, whatever the thing is. So you can wash your hands, and there can be epis residue, or yadav mitunafais mi beis hakisei. However, if v'lo yehoyu lahem reach ra klal, because either it's a very small amount, or because they're already it's dry, so the din is you are allowed to read because she'ein lahem reach ra. No, guys, and also you have to begin. It's a very little amount. Means bepiat there the din is even if when a person is standing it won't be visible, but if it would become visible while a person sits down, then a person physically has to clean the body. Why? Because it will smell bad. However, says the Rambam, that if a person's hands have any amount of tsoya on it, even if it doesn't smell bad, you can't read. You have to wash your hands properly. No, it's not the negel vasa that we spoke about in the beginning. You have to wash your hands with soap. That that you have to wash it off. Again, even though there's no bad odor. Halacha yud beis. Reach ra sheyesh lo ikar. Anything that smells bad, that's coming from something that has substance. Then marchik arba amas v'koyra. But medvar amurim, I know there's two things. The Rambam is making like a sikum. You have to be 4 amas away, and on top of that, there can be a bad odor. So it's 4 amas. If there isn't, if there's a bad odor, you got to go even further. In pasuk harech. However, what happens if there is a bad odor from something that is not substance? For example, a person vented wind. So then, all you need to do is go far enough that you don't smell, and then v'koyra. Another halacha. Graf shel re'i, a chamber pot. You know what a chamber pot is today practically? We have kindalach, the little porter potties. That's called a chamber pot. Or v'avat shel meimei raglaim, or something similar that's used to urinate in. Asur likreis krias ma kenegdon af al pi she'ein behem klum. Nothing substantial. There is no reach ra because they have a din of a beis hakisei. And what did we learn before? Beis hakisei, not only can you not read it inside of it, you cannot read it kenegdon. Okay. By the way, just to add something about the kenegdon. Nowadays, halacha l'maisa, we are not machmir kenegdon. If you're outside the bathroom, you can read nowadays, because nowadays we have plumbing, which means that in the bathroom it's clean. In the bathroom it doesn't smell. Nothing nearly as bad as it used to smell. Like we have here in the shul or many other shuls, you close the door, you're good. Then even kenegdon was awesome. And that will be the same din over here of kids' porta potties. Has a din of a beis hakisei, even when it's clean. Halacha yud gimel. Soya oiveres. There's something floating on top of water. Also likres kenegda. You have to wait until it passes. Pi chazir, the mouth of a chazir is kitzoya veres dam. You have to wait for the chazir to go by. For also likres kenegda yache yavro mimenu arba ames. Halacha yudalet. Hoya koyde vigiel mokamati noifes. We learned yesterday that you are allowed to read the Shema when you're walking. You can be walking, and you're walking by an area in LA. The homeless, there's soya on the street. Don't think that all you need to do is cover your mouth. Because like this, the reich is not coming near your nose and your mouth. You have to wait until you go by that place. If the one who's reading it, he vent wind, until the shame or the bad odor goes away. And says Rambam, the same is b'divrei Torah, Yotzasa ruach mechaveiroi, afal pisha mafsik likroi Shema. That if it left from you, then you have to wait. You have to wait until it goes away. What happens if you were not the guy that vent wind, it was someone near you? So here we differentiate between Shema and learning Torah. Afal pisha mafsik Krias Shema. Either wait or, my friends, go outside. Shema you can read outside. Remember that Gemara? Torah you can't learn outside, because Torah you have to learn in a group. That's the big difference. We're not speaking about Shmoyne Esrei with the minyan. We're speaking about Shema. Shema, go outside. Divrei Torah, ain't a place to Divrei Torah. Again, you were not the one that did it. Someone else did it. Halacha Tezvav. Hoya koyde Krias Shema b'bayis. And now, when it's topic loy im ye sham tsoya oy meraglaim oy ein sham, you have a suffix. Says Paskins that Rambam harei zeh muter likrois. Based on what? Based on the chazaka that a house is clean. Sounds so good. Person has 10 kids, he learns the sugya. The Chazal say there's a chazaka, the house is clean. I'm a chaya. You have a doubt. Until you see it, you can say that the house is clean. But however, if a person is reading Shema on top of a ashba, on top of a garbage heap, people would relieve themselves in those days there, and therefore you have a doubt, im yesham tsoyo ein sham, then lo yikra ache yivdek. By the way, the cleanliness, I was just kidding, the cleanliness is about tsoya. Well, that's something that people clean up. Chazaka, you have a doubt on the house, becheskas naki. A doubt on the ashba, becheskas dirty. Shecheskas wa ashba shi'imokim atinoifis. Avol sofik meiraglayim, afila ba'ashba mutar likrois, because chevra, we learned that if meiraglayim is sunken in the ground, and if you smear your hand, it doesn't even get wet, it's not a problem. That's the pshat. People would also relieve themselves to urinate on top of a pile, but they just did it 2 minutes ago? No, you don't know that. If they did it, it got swallowed up. That's the pshat. Halacha Tezayin. Another than just to know that, if you remember that al pi Torah, you cannot read al pi chachamim. You cannot say words of Torah keneged hakiluach only if a person is facing a person while they're urinating. That's another nafkamina. Masha enking soya. It's just when it's there. That's why, since no one is urinating, also you're lenient by the suffix. These things are very relevant in those days. Okay, weiter. Halacha Tezayin. Kishem she'aso likris keneged atzvei meiraglayim achi yarchik. Now another din. Just like there is an issue with doing it near something that's physically dirty, kach aso likris keneged erva. In the presence of nakedness, one may not read. But here, big difference. You don't have to go away daladamas. You have to simply turn away. Ad sheyachzir panav. And if you're medayik, you don't even have to turn your whole body away. You have to turn your face away. And that has nothing to do with a yid or a not yid, afilokuti, afilokaten, lo yikre keneged arvasan. And here, the nuance that we said, by physically relieving excrement, the Torah says, v'chisisa est seyosecha. So what we need is for it to be buried, which is why we learned that if it was covered with glass, it's called buried, covered. Here, the Torah says, lo yeira ebecha. It's visual, so it has to be covered where you can't see it. Doesn't help. Similarly, the chein gufa isha has a din of nakedness is erva. Gufa isha means the parts of a woman that is normally covered. And the fikach lo yistakal begufa isha kashukaina, and that's even true if it's his wife. If what was exposed of her body, areas that's normally covered, is a tefach or more, don't read kenegda and b'chadra be medayek. But if it's not your wife, then even less than a tefach is considered an erva. Halacha Yud Zayin. Remember, guys, this is a good thing to know. You know, Baruch Hashem, we're supposed to do Mavtzaim. Hopefully we do Mavtzaim. You can have on your table Friday night, or in the shul in the Chabaros, you can have a woman that's not yet covering her hair. So you have to turn your face a little bit. That's mamish a din. Okay, you can't look at her when you make kiddush for her.
Covering hair is erva.
Sure.
Unmarried women.
Unmarried women. Yeah. Okay, I'm an unmarried woman. Yeah. So if someone is not from yet, which means also they're not yet covering their hair, then you stop. Just, you know, it's not like you don't have to go daladamas. Just don't face them when you say dvarim shebek kiddush. You're not allowed to do that. I know it's kiddush Shema, but dvarim shebek kiddush is the same thing. Halacha Yud Zayin. Kshem shehu aser keneged ervas acherim. This din is not because it's someone else's nakedness. Kacho aser likris keneged ervasai. And therefore, v'lo yikra kashu araim ad sheyachase ervasai means a man has to cover his genitalia. In other words, guf ha'isha has a greater status of erva than a man, but the actual genitalia has to be covered. And let's go into details. So ha'isa chagura shel begadoy oires hakoy al masnav. Masnav means right above that area, the loins, by your hips. We're speaking about a man who's the reader, Mutar lo likras Krias Shema, because his erva is covered. And another detail, Chavra, we know this, that the heart cannot be directly seeing, so to say, the erva. So it's perfect. That means today, if a guy is wearing just pants, it's really not nice to say the Shema, but al pi halacha he can say the Shema. He's wearing a yarmulke, he's wearing pants. His erva is covered, and his lave is not seeing the erva. If a person is sitting down, and the physical, his ankle, his heel, is touching his genitalia, he also may not read the Shema. Which was common. They didn't have pajamas. They would go into bed and they would take off their clothing under a sheet. So it's not enough for a guy to say that the sheet is under my neck, so I don't see my erva. Like we're mentioning, there's an inyan that the lave cannot be roya, so he has to like press down. There's a piece of the sheet that separates the heart from the erva. The name Misha Kaida B'Lei Chagura Halacha Yudches Shnayim Shoyu Yoshim V'Talas Achas. Two people are lying under one sheet. Neither of them are wearing clothing. Kol echad mehem also likrois. Af al pi sheichasim etachas liboy. Even if you have the sheet pressing down on their bodies between their heart and their erva, if their bodies are touching each other, until the talus is separating between one and the other, if one may not be touching the other, but it doesn't matter if the hand touches the hand, or for shoulder, it's the area and the body from over there, from the loins down. And then covering, we said, even one's wife, you can't have a tefach megula. But if it's for touching, it's not a problem. Hadei gufan kegufai, you are so habituated that you're not aware of it. Ve'enoi margish mehen, and lefikach afa pisha b'sori negeh b'hem. All you need to do is to be machzir panav, like we mentioned, because the rest of some other body part which is normally covered is going to be exposed. But v'choitzeitz mitachas liboy, his heart should not see his genitalia. V'koida, final halacha yutes, says that Rambam ad emosayim ketanam le'inyan zeh. So don't say that if they're in the bed with you and your body is touching their body, it's not bar mitzvah. So here we have this, like you have mufla hasamach leish. This is a good trivia, which we know, mufla hasamach leish for nadarim already if they're 1 year prior to bar mitzvah. Something similar here. Achi yazacher, if the boy is under 12. And one day, if the girl is under 11 and one day, then they're katana. Once they reach 1 year prior to bar bas mitzvah, it's problematic if their body is beginning to get big. For who, that it's problematic, even though it's only 1 year prior, right, 12 or 11, now, they're built, which means, shadayim nochaynu usa'arich tzimeach. And if they already, in other words, if the body begins to mature by a girl already by 11, or by a boy, even though normally we say that the sa'arais by a boy is like a shuma. The shuma means it's just like coming out of a mole, but it's not real when it comes to the dinam of two sa'arais. Over here it's about pashat, are they maturing or not? Is but if the girl is not developing, even though she's 11, and again their bodies are touching, it's fine, it's your kid. Until they become halachically 13 or 12, that's already different. Or an akeva bashtem, and then they have a din of a gadol, of a gedolah, and you can't read it again, even though there's no ervas davar seeing, but if the bodies are touching, then you can't read the Shema.
Before we touch these ages as being a year lower than they really are.
Yes, they are. No. Here, clear. Here, that's the way it is, Shuki. You're talking about Talmud Torah. Here, it's speaking about we call 12 and 11. Okay. Chavra, the final chapter of Hilchos Krias Shema, Perek Revi. Perek Revi has 8 halachas, and now at the end we're going to speak about those who are exempt from Shema. Just a contrast. By Hilchos Talmud Torah, that was the whole kasha. The Rambam begins who's exempt. Here was good. Here we began the whole thing is just a 4 prakim. Atkan, you have to say the Shema, what's the Shema, with all the dinim. Now, people that are exempt, as we'll see. Halacha number 1. Nashim and Avadim, which have a din like Nashim, and ketanim who are exempt from all mitzvahs. These three categories, pturim mi Krias Shema. Chavre, Krias Shema is a classical mitzvahs asei. It's a biblical commandment. Shehazman gerama b'shach b'cha uvkumecha, and you are exempt. However, even though ketanim are exempt, says that Rambam umelamdin es haketanim likroisa be'oinasa. That's the chiyuv on whom? On the father. Umevarchin lefaneh ula achreha. Because as we said, once the Chachamim added what we call the birchos Krias Shema, the way you fulfill the mitzvah of Shema is by reading it with the brachas. So you're mechanach it properly, kedei lechancham b'mitzvahs. Mishoya liboy tarut, the nechbas, because they are preoccupied and anxious regarding a Dvar Mitzvah, and we'll see a great example in a moment that Chazal keep on using. The Dvar Mitzvah is a very broad statement. It doesn't have to be a narrowly defined mitzvah, it can be, as we'll see, broaderly defined mitzvah. More inclusive. Patur mikol mitzvahs, because of the rule, my friends. What's the rule called? Ha'oisik b'mitzvah patur b'mitzvah, and that even includes the great mitzvah of Kabbalah Malchus Shemayim of Krias Shema. Lefikach, and the lefikach is so important. I know people. I remember in yeshiva. Why is this the example? This is the best example. Just a few words. That first of all, the minig was that if a man married a psula, means a woman that was never married before, they would get married Wednesday night. Wednesday night really means Thursday. Now, the mitzvah is tepruruvu. That's the mitzvah. There's a machlokes rishonim whether marriage is a mitzvah. Many rishonim learn, no, the mitzvah is to have children. Since the Torah only allows people to do what you need to do to have children in marriage, so it's like a hechsher mitzvah. Does she have to be a psula for you to do the mitzvah? No, she doesn't. Nevertheless, if a man marries a psula, in the beginning, in the first few days of marriage, there's a preoccupation. Is she really a psula or not? And if she's not a psula, then if he would want, he can have a taina that mekachtos, as we learned in Ksubas. So imagine, that's called preoccupied with a mitzvah. See, that's a great mashal. It's just a mashal to show you, it's not like there's, and if she'll be a ba'ula, first of all, the man can stay with her. If he wants, he can maybe farnegel out of the monies of the ksuba with all the dinim that we learned over there. That's called ha'isik b'mitzvah. So says the Rambam, lefikach chassan that got married to a psula, on the presumption she's a psula. He's exempt from reading Shema until they have a physical relation. Why? Lefisha ein datoi penuya, his mind is not calm, because what is he preoccupied with? Shemalei matzal psulam. How would a fruma yid know this? I have no idea. That's the whole. I think we learned that in the Gemara, that someone came and told the Rav that Lemitzasi, I didn't find her to be a psula. The first thing that died was he gave him malchus. Yeah. I think that how do you know? How would a fruma yid know? Good, okay. Anyway, weiter. So that's called Torah Devar Mitzvah. Now, even over here, V'im Shoya Ad Motzei Shabbos, which is really 3 days, right? Because it's Thursday, Friday, and Shabbos. Even though there's the inyan of Ve'ilas Mitzvah to do it the night of the wedding, it didn't happen right away. V'loi Ba'al. Now, from Motzei Shabbos and on, he has to read the Shema. Why? Because, number one, Niskara Datoi. Niskara Mati means his mind already settled. This worry, it's amazing how God made us. Even though the cause of the worry didn't change, you can only live that much with worry. You have to just accept the worry, and it doesn't bother you as much. Number two, he's more familiar with her. V'liboy gaspa. Liboy gaspa means, I think it means, that since then they didn't, they had no contact with the opposite gender. He took one look at her before he got married. Once he's already married 3 days, he likes her that much, normal. It won't make such a big difference. That's what I answer. And therefore, there isn't that level of tirda. Another din in halacha l'maisa today. Today we don't have that much kavanah to begin with, so some of these inyanim are not applicable because anyways that type of kavanah you don't have. And for our type of kavanah, we're just fine. You can't pay your bill today and you can say the Shema, so you can say the Shema here also. Halacha 2. Meaning you're thinking about the Be'ilas mitzvah. Doesn't matter, that's not preoccupation or anxiety. Chayav likrois hoyel ve'ein loy davar shemevalvel datoi v'chein kol kayoytze bozeh. Halacha gimel. Misha meis loy meis. What type of meis? A relative for whom chayav lisabel olav. Says the Rambam poter me Krias Shema ache yikberenu. Now, an oinen is pater from all the mitzvahs. But here we're not speaking about that. We're speaking about in the context of, are you preoccupied? What happens if a person is doing shmira not for his relative? Nevertheless, pater mikriya Shema. Again, this is all when people had a much higher level of kavanah. Today, whoever had the schus of doing shmira, you can't read the Shema, you're preoccupied, you're just sitting there saying Tehillim, you can say the Shema. So what you do is, echad mishamer, make sure one person is there, and the other one can step out for a moment and read over there. And then you take turns. Another than, that's a classic, that I can relate with. You're digging the hole. That's a big avodah. Today you have machines. It's yana maisa. Don't think digging a place or a cave is easy. So that's called your oisik b'mitzvah. Oisik b'mitzvah, you're part of a mitzvah, part of a kriya Shema. Halacha dal.
Is it about concentration, or it's about the not saying it in front of a mace?
So we learned on no, it's not about saying it in front of concentration.
There's no issue about not saying it in front of
No, well, loya glorosh, you have to walk away daladamas, we said. You can walk away daladamas and you can be a fine. A shomer doesn't have to be within daladamas. That's a good thing to know. We go today to a morgue, we know exactly what shmira is. Today, you're daladamas, it's not a beis hakvaris. You're not b'toich daladamas, you're not loya glorosh. Also, they're covered. You daven, you say Tehillim. Halacha dal. Don't take out someone to be buried. I want you to know that we paskin already from the times of Shulchan Aruch that there isn't anymore such an Adam Gadol that you say you would wait. He's such an Adam Gadol, don't even delay it a few minutes. But Adam Gadol, but if a Yid was already led to be buried, we're speaking about, guys, before the nates, the way it should be, you bury ASAP. Just make sure the person passed away. So there's dinim, you gotta wait like the 20 minutes, whatever the minig is. So then, the people that are designated to be involved in the beer, in the carrying of, who are they? Remember that? The noisa hamita, but not, let's say today you have 6 people, I think, right? Or 7 people. I'm talking about here in LA, right? 3 on each side and 1 on one. It's 8 people, whatever it is. Not only them, then and the people that are designated to be their replacements, that's called v'chilufeim, and the chilufeim. Everyone, I saw people want to do the mitzvah. You can say, even if it's very heavy, you can alternate back and forth. No, people wanted to be involved. So let's say the people that were designated to be, even the replacements of the replacements, they are all exempt. However, and it's not a stira, guys, they can say it when they're walking. What did we learn yesterday? You have to stop for the pasuk rishon. So here it depends. If the mace is munach lifneihem, as we see by many hespedim, then people who say the Shema have to leave the room. But make sure you don't disrespect the hesped. So do it, some people and other people take turns. Nishmat echad v'koyden v'chayzen lahesped. That's because the mace is in the room. But if ein ha-mace muter lifneihem, in the middle of the hesped, kolam koyden kriya Shema. And even if the mourners are there, a mourner is parted from Shema. We just learned that. So the aval is Yoshev Doimein. He's silent. Lefishen chayv likres at sheikvar es meisoi.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Is because of his mind not being able to focus on Rishma in our case?
No.
It's a separate concept.
I think so. Or no. Okay, it's because you can't do 2 things at the same time. Correct.
Because you can't be fully focused.
Okay, well, let me just say what Rechen is saying is that Kriya Shema needs kavana. The din of oisik b'mitzvah, patam mitzvah is even for mitzvahs that don't need kavana. Giving a pruta lo'ani doesn't need kavana. Put your hand in your pocket, give him a pruta. If you're shomer aveda, we learned, you're pater from giving the oisik b'mitzvah, patam mitzvah. Correct. Oisik b'mitzvah is greater than this din. Here we're speaking about people like he married a woman. He's being oisik b'mitzvah. He's pater from Shema because his preoccupation. If the preoccupation will not be mitzvah related, then we wouldn't say you're preoccupied. A guy has a big chayv to pay. We don't say he's patur from davening. If the fact that he can't have kavanah, he won't daven. But I'm saying there's no such a din. Since he's oisik b'mitzvah, that's the broad. He's worried about she's not a ba'ula. It still bothers me. I'm trying to get therapy on this. Like, that's called he's worried. Like, okay, but yeah, that's worrying enough. Halacha vav. Kavru es hameis. The mace was buried. Now, right after the burial, we do the shura. We spoke this at the end of Hilchas Eivel. The opposite way it was done at the times of Chazal. Today, the mourners, no one should know, walks in between. Then it was the opposite. The mourners would stand, and people would get online. The way the people that are not that traditional, you walk at the end of the ceremony. You walk over. Everyone walks over to offer a final condolences to the Avelim that are there. So that's the way it was done then. So you're on that line, you're not there yet. Before they reach the shura, before they reach the line that's in front of the mourners, then yaschilu. Ella first all based on what we learned that Shema should be done right before the nates. Now, B'nai Adam ha'imdim b'shur, the people that are already on the line. But here's a chaim, even though you are on the line, how close are you to the mourners? Do you see the mourners? So it depends. The iha pnimiyim, meaning the ones that can see the face of the avelim, even though the guy in front of you is taking a lot of time speaking to the avelim. That's the way it is. But you already can see them, then you are exempt. Hachitzoinim hoyel ve'enim ve'enim remesavelim chayavim mikrishma b'mekoimam. Halacha zayin kol mishu pater mikrimei likreis Krias Shema. We gave many people that are exempt. What happens if they want to be machmir and read? What did we learn in the Mishnah? That Rabban Gamliel, right, read Shema the night that he got married to Absula. That was the Mishnah. He wasn't preoccupied. He had kavanah. He can read. But for who should he datli pinoya olav? You have to know yada inish benafshay. Avalam hoya hapater mi likris mevayol. Very good. And that answers the question, Rabbi Chaim. Ha'isik b'mitzvah means you are pater min mitzvah. It doesn't mean that you can't do it. It means you're not chayiv to do it. That's it. That's the answer. By Shema, it's unique. No, if I'm exempt from a mitzvah, like I gave my example, Shema Avedas pater to give a pruta lo'ani. But if I give a pruta lo'ani, I did a mitzvah. Yashakoyach, you tell him. If someone is ha'isik b'mitzvah, and therefore he's pater from Shema, and if he's going to say, I want to do it, then hold on. If you're preoccupied, if you will not have kavanah, then you're not doing anything. So you have to know whether you could have kavanah.
How do we do that with people who are in the hospital when it's tefillin on them and say Shema?
So like this, tefillin you get a mitzvah anyways, and in Shulchan Aruch, again, I don't know where to draw the line, but in Shulchan Aruch it says, like we mentioned, regarding other dinim, regarding Shema, that today we don't have that level of kavanah anyway. That's a Tosfos that says that, Shemana Esrei, we don't have that much kavanah anyway, so we are a lot, what's real Kabbalah, so Malchus Shemaim is like a big thing. Could be with such Kabbalah Solniks that we're always Kabbalah so Malchus Shemaim, you can look at it like Havschus. Okay, then Ein Shoya Likrois. In other words, you can't say, I know that I'm pater, but I want to be frum. No, if you're preoccupied, then don't read it. It's almost sacrilegious. Imagine standing in front of a king to be makabel his malchus, but you're not there. Your begashmi is there, but you're not mindful. Don't do that. You're not allowed to read it. Final halacha ches. Kol hatameim chayavim b'kriyas Shema. No matter how great the tumah, the biggest tumah is tumas meis. You're chayiv, and not only the Shema. Umevarchem lefanei olachrei. Even while the person is in their tumah. And even, Mela, I gave an example, a person is tummy with tumas meis. You can say, Yishkoyach, you need to have 7 days, But what happens if a person is tummy and they can get out of the tumah? They can get out by going to the mikveh. So why don't you say, go to the mikveh, like tumas keri. Go to the mikveh and say the Shema. He doesn't want to speak about Kedi. He'll speak about Kedi in a moment because there was a time, Tefilas Ezra. But he gives an example. A person who's tamei on a level of a rishon. That's what you have to say. So a person touched a dead sheretz from the Shemaina Shiratzim. A person who touched a nida. They touched an av, so they became a rishon. or a zava, or they touched a bed that was used by a nida or a zava, which becomes like them. The bed becomes like that. It means the person is a rishain. Now a rishain, I know to eat truma, it's not enough for you to go to the mikveh. Even though you're a rishain, you have to go to the mikveh, you have to wait until the night, but you're not eating truma, you're saying the Shema. So one would have thought, go to the mikveh and say the Shema. You don't have to do that. Now the special din about Tumas Keri. The Ezra Beis Dinoi, we learned he made 10 enactments, 10 takonas. One of them did not take hold. This is the one. He made the decree Shelo Yikra B'Divrei Torah Bal Keri Levadoi. In other words, something is unique about a Bal Keri. Not because Tuma Chamura. The word is because the Chachamim didn't want for Talmidei Chachamim to be Mitzuyin Eitzel Nishayim Ketar Negoilim. So they felt that the way there's going to be a higher level of segregation is by saying if you're Al Bal Keri, you can't read Divrei Torah. So people are going to think twice. Didn't work. But during that period, and v'hoitziyu michlal shara tamei matche yitboil. So even though there was such a takana, and if the takana would have taken hold, what is the rule, my friends? Even if you think the reason is batal, you cannot be mevatel that takana only if you convene a Sanhedrin that's gadol mimena b'chachma b'minyan, which never happened. But it never took hold. It never took hold. Since v'lei pashta takana zu b'chol Yisrael, and v'lei hoya koich b'rei v'tzimon la'amid b'am. So therefore, this takana was completely negated. And now,
Actively,
no, we're not keeping it. It went away. Ukfar nohagu kol Yisrael likrois batoiram and velikrois Krias Shema. Even while they are balikerian, and based on their biblical rule, that's the takana says that it did not take hold. So let's go back to the din Torah. Lefisha ein divrei Torah mekabel tuma. It's interesting that Rambam is explaining the reason behind the din Torah. As it says, God says, my words. What are my words? Divrei Torah. To a certain degree, Tefila are like fire. Why do we compare it to fire? One of the reasons is, just like fire halachically cannot be mekabel tuma. If there's a fire under the oil of a mace, the fire doesn't become tamei. Av divrei Torah einen mekabel tuma. And Berich Rachmana Desayon. Now let's move on, my friends, to the final Pedic of today, to the first chapter of Hilchos Tefila Ubirchas Kohanim. The first chapter is going to speak about Tefila D'Oraisa, about Tefila D'Rabbanan. This is a big chapter. When people learn this being the sugya of Tefila, big machlokes, Ramban. When people speak about that, this is it. No, it's the big Tefila D'Oraisa or Tefila D'Rabbanan. The Rambam holds Tefila is D'Oraisa. Yesh b'chlal and shtei mitzvahs. You have two mitzvahs I say. Achas la'avoid es Hashem b'chol yom b'tefila. And number two, look at this, is levarech in this series. The Kohanim es Yisrael b'chol yom. How beautiful is it that b'hashgacha pratis we are learning this Rambam Tafshem Pei Beis Parshas Nasi. This is the parsha of Birchos Kohanim. Bir shtei mitzvahs elu beprokem elu Pedic. Pedic has 10 halachas. Let me give a quick, just a good approach, a gavaldic approach that the Rebbe establishes from the Rambam, that there is a nuance by Tefillah which makes it unique. Before we get into it, it's a din d'oraisa. Is Tefillah avodas halev? Is it choivas halavavas, like we had in Sefer Mada, like Ahavas Hashem? It's a mitzvah on the heart. So it's to be meschanen from the heart, or is tefillah verbal, and it's a composite of. And just to know that in Nigla, that whenever we focus, we use the words avoida. Avoida is leiv. The kavana of tefillah is the avoida of tefillah. The word tefillah means to verbalize prayer, and the ikir, we're speaking about halachic. Prayer is called bakashas tzarachav, with the understanding that when you ask God for your needs, you don't boom ask God for your needs. You first speak, as we'll see, there's a rule. First you give shvach, then you ask for your needs, then you give thanksgiving. But the simplest prayer is to verbalize your needs, but it should be done in a way of supplication, heartfelt. So it's a composite. You can't call it a choivas halavavas mitzvah, because we have to verbalize prayer but it should be done with your heart. Okay. Perek Rishon Halacha Aleph. Mitzvahs asay lehispalol b'chol yom. And I want to teach guys, lispalol means to talk verbally to God every day, biblically. And it's important to know that even though you hear every day, that does not make it into a time-bound mitzvah. A time-bound mitzvah is Shema, the last series. Shema has to be said, like we said, during nates, or max the 3 hours. During the night one, bisman shchiva, that's called time-bound. Even things that have to be done every day, the fact that it could be done any time during the day, every day, not one day yeah, one day not, it's called a non-time-bound mitzvah. But every day.
Isn't there Islam too?
That's midrabanan. That's midrabanan. Yes. So tefillah, the biblical prayer, which is every day, is not called time-bound. And the biggest thing is, how do you know it's every day? So the Rambam is not just bringing a pasuk that it's a mitzvah. We have time. We have 20 minutes to daven. It's a mitzvah to say to daven. He's saying it's a mitzvah to daven every day because it says va'avadatem eis Hashem Elokeichem. No, you tell me. How do you see every day? In other words, va'avadatem es Hashem Elokeichem, and we look at the kavanah as part of. It's a mitzvah to verbalize bakashas tzarachav with heart. So I get it. Avoid the Shabbat is tefillah, seder. But how do you know it's every day?
Evidence to serve the master every day.
So the pasuk says, this is a big discussion. It says the next words is uveirach es lachmecha ve'es meimecha. That was the Rebbe. There's a big sikh on this. I mean, this is a big topic. And in other words, since it says serve God Elokeichem, and God will bless your bread and your water, uveirach es lachmecha ve'es meimecha. So since God made us in a way that every day we have these needs, and the Rebbe adds a detail, could be some people, even if you don't need bread because you're having your cubby bread, right? We learn don't let it hanging bread. That's a bring aniyos, put it on a shelf. But the concept is that we have daily needs. Every human being has daily needs. You have to sleep every day. There's needs, and the avoid is connected to those needs. So that's the raya, that it's an everyday. That this avoida refers to tefillah. Shenemar, as it says, Uli avdoi b'chol levavechem. And v'amru chachamim ez avoida shebelev zoi tefillah. Okay, so first of all, biblically, you have to verbalize your needs with heart. That's the way that Rebbe teaches it, every day. Anytime during the day, any way you want. Mitzvahs asay, that's not time-bound. Ve'ein minyan hatfilas min haTorah. Number one. Number two, ve'ein mishnei hatfilah. Mishnah means the formula, the nusach. Azois min haTorah. Number three things. Ve'ein latfilah zman kavua min haTorah. It's the fact that any time during the day that I want, when I feel the need, I should turn to God and verbalize and ask with heart. It's not time-bound. Ulefikach, since biblical prayer is not time-bound, Nashim and Avadim are chayavin batfila. Lefi she'ein mitzvahs asay, lefi she'ein mitzvahs asay shalei asman gerama. Now, the Ramban holds tefillah is midrabanan, and lechatchila the Chachamim gave it to women, because since tefillah is bakashas rachamim, and every human being, men, women, need rachamim, so we both need rachamim equally. We're learning Rambam. We are obligated from God to verbally ask Him for our needs every day, whenever we want, and that's on women like men. Elochi of mitzvah zu kachi sheyei anam. See, that's the diuk of the Rebbe also. The word mischanein is the heart. The word tefillah means verbal. No, it's to have a heartfelt, verbal request of God every day. And what the Rambam is writing here, you can even say is on a biblical level. Because there's a rhyme and a reason. There's a way of speaking to God. It's nicht hefkerwelt. God, I need this. That's not the way you talk to God Almighty. That's maybe the way you talk to, even to your chaver, don't talk that way. So in other words, then, this is before the rabbinic formulation of the tefillah. There was a way of doing it. That omagid shivchai shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The way you ask God, heartfelt, is first you praise God. Then you ask God your needs. That what you need. And bibakasha ubetchina. And the word bakasha means verbal, betchina means from your heart. And then you don't say goodbye. Halacha gimel. This is only Doraisa.
So what did it look like tefillah before the Hashem?
Exactly what we said. God, you're so nice to me. I pray. I am grateful. You're awesome. Please help me out.
Any language, anything.
Any language, anything. People normally spoke in Lashon HaKodesh. They asked, and then they would give a thanks to God.
Where does it say it has to be verbalized with your lips?
That's important to know, that we speak to God verbally.
I mean, not in your thought.
Not in your thought. The moment of silence is not a Jewish thing. It's not Jewish tefillah. Even though that I'm on Paskin, that if you read the Shema in your heart, you're yoytze. But I'm saying tefillah is bepeh. Now, halacha gimel. Im hayiragil. So that, like he asked Avremel, like, how do you do it? Depends. If a person was able to speak eloquently, so marbe betchino bakash. Also, some people are more heartsick people than not. So, also to be marbe betchina. Some people are very heartsick people, and if not, then nicht. Yeah, people, you know. If someone did not express himself properly, or even a person that had a speech impediment, did the best he could. The point is, some people would daven pamachas bayom. You know, some people would daven in a moment, in 5 seconds. You can give a praise. Honey, you're awesome. Coffee, please. Thank you. It doesn't take that much time. But everyone, even on a biblical level, ideally would daven facing the Beis HaMikdash, no matter where you are. 2 details. No matter where the temple is, because Mishkan Shiloi, they daven toward Shiloi. Gilgal, in the Midbar, or whether you are in Israel. Some people think, if I'm in Israel, I have to daven Keneged Makam HaMikdash. If I'm in China, no matter which way I face, at some point you're going around the globe. No. No matter where the Mikdash is, after David HaMelech, Yerushalayim and HaKodesh, no matter where you were faced the Makam HaMikdash. And when we went into Golus Bavel, that was the first time that we were exiled since when God chose us as a people. We got mixed up with other tongues, other nations, and we already had children there. And those children that were born in foreign countries, the Rambam, it's amazing, guys. We're learning 3 dinim about Tefillah midrabanan. 3. This is all just about the nusach, not about the zman. We'll see. The nusach that we didn't speak clearly. No one spoke pure. No, it's not we spoke Lashon HaKodesh pure, nor we spoke Aramaic. It's like, you know, Americans that speak Yiddish, halavai. Not they speak Yiddish, not they speak English. Every 10th word is an English word. So it's nishtahed or nishtahen. It's not one pure language. And speaking to God b'lashon achas is very important. Mikan, just to know that when it's not right now, but when we add our private prayer in Shema Tefila, as we should, if you're davening Shemona Esrei b'lashon HaKodesh, add your prayer b'lashon HaKodesh. You know, the idea is, it makes sense when you're speaking to the Eibishter, even though you can argue, who cares? Well, who cares? Why do you have to get dressed like a mensch? Why do you have to wash your mouth? No, from my perspective, I have to speak to God at least the way I speak to a human king. I have to dress like a mensch. I have to be clean like a mensch. Speak in one language. You don't speak to a person in 2 languages, to someone who you have reverence to. Speak in one language. So they were mixing in. Ella, b'shibush. They were constantly mixing. Not mistake. You know, like the way people speak Yiddish, no? An American speaking Yiddish, again, it's arangemish with English. Shenemar, as it says, u'b'neim chatzi medabrois ashdoides, ve'eino makirim ladabri Yehudis. Rather, they were speaking uchaloshen am v'am. Now, if they would speak a pure Aramish, the way Unkelus did, that would also be okay. They're speaking one language, but they didn't do that. They were all mixed up. So this is all a reason why the Chachamim got involved. Once they got involved, it's good to just to note that. They didn't just write the language. They did a lot of other formulations. Zman Tefila. Like this is not a tam for Zman Tefila, but this is an intro why the Chachamim got involved in our prayer. Be prior to us having the Nusach HaTefillah, people would be limited in one's ability to ask for their needs. Notice, when you can't speak clear, you know what you end up doing? You speak less. And it's ideal to speak more eloquently. That's what he wrote before. People that were able to speak well, they spoke better. People might have the feeling to praise God, but they were unable to do so. The only way they would be able to eloquently praise God is by mixing up two languages together, which is not b'chavadik. And as we'll see again, it's not only that, but all of the three details that we'll learn about. Shalish, now, the details of the Nusach was, the first three, Shavach Lashem. 3 brachas praising God. The final 3 is thanksgiving. Just to bring up the big question. This is a klotz kasha. You tell me how Sim Shalom is Hoida. You tell me. How it sounds like we're asking God for peace like any other of the imsois, but it's considered thanksgiving. And then the middle ones, when we had 18 prior to the, fixing the 19th, the middle is 12, right? 3 and 3. The middle 12, it's also divided in half. The first 6 of the 12 is private, and the latter 6 of the 12 is communal. They included categories, right? Avos told us. No, it's in the 12 middle ones. All of your needs will be included in one of those 12 categories. There is no topic that's not covered by the formulation of Ezra or Beis Dinai. And why did they do that? Everyone should learn the Nusach of Shemona Esrei, and therefore, even the ilgin, even people that are unable to express themselves, will be davening just as great as the most eloquent speaker. Tefillah shleim ketfilas ba'al lashon hatzacha. Umepnei inyan zeh tiknu kol habrachas v'atfilas misudaris b'fi kol Yisrael kedei sheyehei inyan kol bracha aruch b'fi ha'ileg. The first thing they did was they made uniform prayer. And that was a big blessing for people that don't master a language. And even people, by the way, that master languages, like we learned before, some people are not eloquent. And this gave a person the ability to cover every single type of need.
It also took the heart out of the davening.
So now you're right. Now we have to make a greater effort to put heart in. Acknowledged. But now what the Rambam is getting at is that all of this is only why they made the Nusach. But that's not where they stopped. They enacted more. Halacha, hey. They gave a number to prayers. It wasn't so biblically. How many? 2 every day. Why? Keneged shnei tamidim. And if in the temple there is a karban musaf, then you have to have a third musaf. And let's go into details. Tefila, the morning prayer, which was in the place of the morning tamid, or it corresponds to. I don't want to say the place of, because guys, don't forget that Ezra, Beis Dinai, they were the ones that built a second Beis Hamikdash. In other words, it's not in the place of, it's corresponding to. That's a better taich. Even Bizman HaBayis, when you bring a karban tamid, whether it was mechuyev or optional, but you had a tefillah of shachar, of shachris. Here nekras tefillah shachar. Tefillah that's connected to Shemona Abayim, that's called tefillas mincha. Now, why do we call it mincha? Right, come on, it's called tamid shel bein ha'arbayim. Why didn't you call it tefillas bein ha'arbayim? So either it's called menuchas ha'shemesh. We learned, I think it was a Tosfos, the whole idea that when the Torah uses the word in karbanis v'nefesh, it's by a karban mincha. Karban mincha in the Chumash doesn't mean afternoon, it means the poor man's offering. He can only afford flour. Since mincha is the hardest tefillah to daven, certainly with the minyan, because you're stopping in the middle of the day, especially winter, so that's, you have to put your nefesh into it, so there's some mincha, and other reasons that the famous why mincha. Utfila shekeneged hamusafin yanikras tefillas hamusafin. Halacha vav. So guys, it's amazing. So the first Nusach, we explained the reason, but now we're giving numbers of tefillah. How many? Right? And v'chein eskinu she'adam espalot tefillah achas balayla. It's a separate type of tefillah called what we call maitiv. And why? Also corresponding to the karbanis, even though no carbon was allowed to be slaughtered at night, but shaharei every tam shalin arbayim misaklin v'oichlam kol alayla. Truth be told, my friends, that the evadim of other karbanis can also be burning the whole night. But that would not explain maitiv, because maitiv was keneged timidin. So we're linking it to the carbon tamid. Shenemar hi ha'oil al mizbeach kol alayla al boiker. So that's number one. Another uke'inyan sheneber and tilim, it says regarding speaking to God. Erev. Erev means at night. Erev v'boiker v'tzoraim. See, 3 times: at night, in the morning, and in the afternoon. Asicha ve'ehema v'yishma koili. I will speak and cry aloud. Again, there's speaking, my friends, verbal, and then there's the emotion. However, even though they also enacted to daven maitiv, that was this big machlekes. Says that Rambam ve'ein tfilas arvas choiva k'tfilas shachris u'mincha. In its inception, it was not obligatory, but and listen to these words, my friend. So don't approach it like reshus, the way you think reshus. Now that we were makabel it as a chayva, so it was not enacted by Ezra. It's as a milmata l'mayla, but now we got to keep to it because we accepted it upon ourselves. Halacha zayin. V'chein tiknu tefila achar tefilas mincha. There was another prayer at times that's davened after mincha. Samach l'shkias achama. When is that? Only on fast days. And why is that? Kadei lahoisef tchinu b'kashim epnei ataynis. This tefillah is called tefilas ne'ilah. The word ne'ilah means closing. What's closing? Koloimar nin alu sha'arei shemayim ba'ad hashemesh. Right? The gates of heaven are closed behind the sun when the sun becomes hidden, so to say. The Rebbe has another understanding over here, that closing is what Hasidim call yechidas. In other words, in God's presence, we have the merit of standing there, so do angels. There's a lot going on. Tfilas ne'ilah is at a time that it's only us and God. It's ke'ilu, the door is closed, and we are inside, only us with the Eibishter. And it's called ne'ilah lefisha emes palanoisa ela samach l'shkias acham. Again, this door is closing the sun. The door is closing out the sun.
So it's every tinus.
By the Rambam, every tinus. Yeah, we don't do it. Correct. Halacha ches. So now let's just make a recap. Nimtzu atfilas b'chol yoim shalosh. Every day you have 3. See, now that Rambam puts them all together. Interestingly, now that Rambam is beginning with maitiv. He began before with shachris because it was not from Ezra included in his takana. Nimsu, again 3, Arvis, Shachris u'mincha, and Shabbosos, and B'moyadim, and Anoshi Chadashim, which means days in which you have a carbon musaf. 4, Shalosh B'chol Yom, Tfilas HaMusafin, and B'yom HaKippurim, Chamesh, Arbas Elu, and Tfilas Ne'ilah. Halacha 9. Now, Tfilos Elu ein poichas mehen. When we're giving the number of prayers, it's only that we cannot daven less than these 3, 4, 5. Aval moisifan aleim, but you can add to them. Im adam roitz lispalol kol yom kuloi. By what? By saying Shemona Esrei, saying 80 Shemona Esrei a day, harashus biyadai. And v'chol oisan atfila sheyoisif is equivalent to someone bisman habayis adding a carbon that we call a donation offering. However, since it's not obligatory, and since we were not allowed to bring 2 tamid shal shachars, so to make it distinct that this is a ki'ilu and the dava, you have to add some words in the Shemona Esrei to make it different than the standard. Lefikach tzarech sheichadash davar. Now, the Rambam begins by saying that you should add a davar where b'chol bracha bracha min ansais, and every one of the middle 12 add something. They have to be done in the same language. They have to be about the topic of the bracha. Like in the Fa'enu, add the name of a person who you know needs a refuah shalema. However, the Rambam says that adding something in every bracha is not essential. You have to add. It suffices to add one personal prayer in the entire Shemona Esrei. And where, the Rambam is not going into where, but if you want to add for Parnasa, add a Baruch Aleinu. If you want to add for Refuah, add an Refu'enu. Or if you can add anything you want in the bracha of Shema Tefila, Da'yoy once is enough. Kedei lo hidia shi nedava v'lo chayva. Like we said, you can't bring 2 Tammuz Shal Shachars, v'shalosh rishonis, v'shalosh achronis, but this chidush is only in the middle 12, or now middle 14, as we're going to start learning tomorrow. The first 3 and the final 3, la'olam ein mosifnu behem, v'lo poichasin behem, v'ein mishanan behem davar. Nu chavra, what's the big kasha? No, Aseres Yemei Tshuva. What are you talking about? Zachrenu l'chaim, micha moicha uchsoiv. You dafka do it over there. That big kasha this. And the halachic answer is that those requests are tzarchei rabim. And the Rama means, he's speaking about tzarchei yachid, that your private needs are not added. But let's leave it at that, and let's learn the final halacha. Tzvikas here. Halacha yud ein hatzibur mispalim tfilas nadava. A tzibur cannot add a tfilas nadava. Makes a lot of sense. Lefisha ein hatzibur meviim karban nadava. It's only a yachid. Another thing, even a yachid cannot have 2 musavs, because musav is by, no, it's a tamid could be communal, a tamid could be a carbon oila, not musav. You cannot be menadeh for carbon musav. Furthermore, it says Rambam you can't add another shachar shmona esrei of Shabbos. Makes a lot of sense. Why? Because in the Beis Hamikdash you cannot bring a private nedava. You can only bring the b'moyadoi elo chayvas hayoim bilvad gevaldik. God willing, to be continued.
Quick question.
Yes.
So, Shema